our guest is here. So let me, oops, wrong person. Let me click on this. Here we go. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining. So typically this is like my debate time, but there are some times where I take opportunities as points of personal privilege. And this story surrounding Manuel Ellis is one that hits too close to home, literally. Just, 20 minutes from where I was raised. I'm in the south end of Seattle. And I just want to first commend you all on the work that you're doing around the Manuel Ellis case, and would love for you to introduce yourself to our viewing audience right now, and then we can talk about Manny's case.
Okay. My name is Jamaica Scott. I'm an organizer in Tacoma, Washington, as well as just a regular old Black person with the Tacoma Action Collective. And we are a Black, femme, queer-led organizing group that just wants to get us free.
So, yeah. Well, thank you so much. I want to commend you because so much of your work has really helped me to help amplify what's happening with the case. We were able to speak directly with the mayor in Tacoma, and I think that we all saw some significant changes in her posture around this case. Able to make some moves in the state, I don't think enough, and not enough quickly. So I would love if you can for a moment talk about what happened, when it happened, and talk about the work around the Tacoma Action Collective, and then I'll have some more questions for you. But I think just grounding us in like where we are and what happened and why we're here today would be really helpful.
Yeah. So Manuel Ellis was killed by the Tacoma police on March 3rd of this year. He was walking from his apartment to get some snacks at a local 7-Eleven, I believe. Mm-hmm. And initially, all we knew, public, as far as an official statement, was there was an officer involved killing, and that was really it. There wasn't a whole lot of information on what happened, no follow-up, who the officers were, who the person was whose life was taken. And it just kind of fell off the radar because at least for the general public, because there was just no story around it. There was no follow-up, there was no transparency. His family learned of his death and obviously immediately had a lot of questions, but they were met with that lack of transparency. They were getting shut down, like they weren't, there was a call made to Manuel's sister, and she was told that he had died, but that was kind of it. There wasn't any real care taken to kind of let them know what happened, to walk them through the process of what happened next. And after that, it was just kind of a series of questions without answers. And Manuel's sister, Monèt, did a lot to try to get his story out there. She shared it on her Facebook. She was reaching out to people as much as she could. She reached out to local city officials, including the mayor, including our local urban league, and various places like that. And nobody was able to give her any answers. Nobody had heard of Manny's death. Nobody tried. It seemed as though nobody was following up to even go and get information about it to bring back to her. Mm-hmm. She reached out to us. I can't remember the exact date, but it was near getting close to June, late May, early June. And she didn't get any answers until a local reporter managed to get some information from the medical examiner's office. I think it was just during one of their routine records things that they get to just kind of their general notifications that they have at the paper. And that said that his death was ruled a homicide and that he died due to asphyxiation. They had initially said that he had died of excited delirium, which we know is a very common thing that is said, but is not an actual thing that kills anybody or even physically takes place. But it turned out that he had died due to asphyxiation, due to being restrained.
Yeah.
And the police's initial statements around it were just that it was excited delirium, and that was it. They, from there, did their investigation, and the officers who were involved with the murder, there were 4 of them that they say were involved. They were put on leave, and then they were let back before they even knew the determined cause of death. Those officers were back at work.
Yep.
And so it wasn't until we kind of started making noise on behalf of Manny's family that those officers ended up being put back on leave, and oh, there's an investigation happening now. But as things played out, it happened very quickly. Once it started rolling, the information, people just didn't feel comfortable going to the police, but there were witnesses there that night.
Right.
And so one young woman caught on video part of it from one angle, and her story's never changed. It's always been the same, that the police stopped Manny. Initially they said that he had been pounding on cars, that he was trying to open somebody's car door, that he pounded on the police's car, and that was what initiated that contact with him. But this witness says that no, he was just walking down the street and the police called him over. He eventually was about to walk away when one of the officers opened up the door and hit him with the door and knocked him over. And from there, it just kind of escalated very, very quickly into Manny being brutalized. And our local I think it's the Pierce County Sheriff's Department, their public information officer, he said, this isn't like George Floyd. There was no choking. There was no knee to the neck, but there was. They choked him. They put their knee on his back. They tased him. They put a spit mask over his head, and they also hobbled him. So they tied his hands, they cuffed his hands and feet. The police said that there were no videos or that the footage was grainy, but it was a Ring doorbell camera. And it didn't catch a lot of it, the visual, but it caught Manny clearly yelling that he couldn't breathe. That I can't breathe, sir, I can't breathe. And the officer can be heard saying, shut the fuck up. In response to that. Again, they kept trying to say like, oh, no, that's not what happened, blah, 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 blah. But then yet another video came in from another witness from a different angle that shows just exactly how much they were brutalizing him. We were able to, with the permission of Manny's family and those witnesses, luckily sharing those videos with us, we were able to share that and help. And it's unfortunate that we have to share those videos to kind of bring people's attention to it, but that is one of the things that really kind of brought more attention to it. And the further that this process went on, we learned that it wasn't just Tacoma police on the scene. It was also Pierce County Sheriff's. It was also Washington State Patrol. And somebody, there's other, it was kind of in an area where a lot of different jurisdictions kind of
intersect, responded.
Yeah. So there was quite a bit of activity that happened. And eventually what came out of that is we called for an independent investigation, and we have a new law that was passed in Washington, Initiative 940, that was De-Escalate Washington, and it was supposed to put in place a series of protections for civilians when it came to police brutality, and any like death in custody of the police. But there was no follow through on that. Just a series of things should have happened immediately after. The family should have been notified. They should have a family liaison. There should have been the process launched to put together an independent investigative team, and just none of that happened at all. So we worked with the family. One of their main demands outside of having those officers fired was an independent investigation. And, on June 10th is when the governor announced that there would be an independent investigation. And on June 17th, they announced that it would be the Washington State Patrol, which is just another local form of cops in the state who would be heading up the investigation. So and that whole thing, it's supposed to have started kind of immediately, but they're saying now that it's still going to take another like 2 to 4 weeks. So at this point, we're not even looking, they haven't even started their investigation. So they're not even looking to start their investigation at this point. The timeline is looking close to the end of July.
This is
And
why I really wanted to talk this through. I do want to talk a little bit about like who Manny was, and I know that neither of us knew him, but we know what his family has shared with us, and I think it's important. I think it's frustrating that we have to go through the humanizing aspects of this, but we should, based on what the reporting has been, right, and what they said happened versus what was actually caught on camera. But I want to just pause for a moment on the fact that Washington State has a Democratic governor. And Washington State's Democratic governor is Jay Inslee, who some of you all will recognize the name from him running in the Democratic primary for president. And I remember when he announced people's dismay and surprise at my response, which was not favorable. Washington State, Eddie Rye just called me. That was my dad. But people were surprised that I wasn't supportive because they're like, oh, well, he's progressive and he's for the environment. And I'm like, yeah, but not racial justice. And I think that this is a really good example of that because he knows what the outcry is. There's not been any, confusion about the emails he's received, the calls he's received, about what the course of action should be that he should take. But yet, lo and behold, this is where the intersection of race and politics collides and the outcome is not positive, right?
right.
So anyway, it's a point of real frustration because I think that, so often, like I'll say in passing, like racism is a bipartisan problem. And I think that this is an example of, Jay Inslee wanting to cover his own backside more than pursuing justice and ensuring justice for this family. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit, if we could go like back to the night of the incident, what Manuel Ellis was doing and what he just returned from doing, and like the type of person he was, so that people understand. And it should be that you could be a complete jackass and it still shouldn't happen to you, but that's not who he was, right?
Exactly. No. Yeah, he had been playing drums at the church. He had been getting more and more involved with. He was feeling really good about it. He had called his mom that night. He had called his sister that night. And he was just in really good spirits. He was really, from what I understand, he was excited about this new path in life that he was, everybody has their growing pains. Everybody has their mistakes that they have to learn from and grow from and build on. And that sounds like exactly what he was trying to do. And he was, he has young children, and he was just really trying to pull himself together and put himself back on a path that he felt really aligned with where he wanted to go and who he was. And and the way his family talks about him, it's it's unfortunate that I never got the chance to know him, and that people aren't going to get the chance to know him, because he sounds like somebody who made people smile, and he made them laugh, and he made them feel loved. And he was somebody who was a bright light in people's lives. And his mom, I've heard her tell the story of that last phone call she had with him, and it's heartbreaking. And it's heartbreaking knowing that she didn't know that was her last conversation with her son. And it's heartbreaking to know that, like shortly after Mother's Day rolled around and he wasn't there, and Father's Day rolled around and he wasn't there. And so it's, he was somebody who lived a life that was varied and storied, and he had a lot of people who cared about him, and a lot of people he cared about and cared for. And it's just a shame that he was taken in a moment that didn't have to end the way that it did.
Yeah, and I think his sister may be in here because there's somebody commenting on the type of person he was. I'd love to talk to her when we conclude. But One of the things that I think is fascinating too is that he was on his way to a 7-Eleven to get snacks. We've heard that part of the narrative before, right? He was walking back, stopped by the police. They claimed that he had this superhuman strength where he picked up one of the officers and threw him to the ground. And none of that stuff happened. It's not on camera. It's not anywhere. And so you're like, how many times have we talked about police reports that have blatant lies in them? And here they are caught in the lie. Video footage exists. We're like, oh, well, people want to push for body cam legislation right now and, more transparency and reporting. That requires honest engagement from officers and honest systems, which we clearly see in this Manuel Ellis example that does not exist. And so, sis, I really just want to ask you, from the standpoint of knowing you've been carrying so much of this work and your organization's been carrying so much of this work, what do those of us who are following this story and want to be supportive, where are the places where we can lean in to provide you all the most amount of support and show the greatest amount of solidarity right now?
Well, there's a couple things, and one of the main things is that these officers have not been fired. They are still just on administrative leave. Though the mayor kind of, she went from not knowing enough about the situation in her role as mayor to getting to the position where she called for these officers to be fired. The reality of that is that the way Tacoma works is we have a weak mayoral system, and that means that she's kind of, in a lot of aspects when it comes to this, she's just kind of another council member. And the person who really, really has the power to fire these officers is our city manager, Elizabeth Pauley. And so, and Elizabeth Pauley has the authority to, if she wanted to right now, to fire those officers. She has said she won't do it unless the city council votes for her to do it. So right now, what we're really, really trying to do is push people to call our city council members to tell them that this needs to be brought to a vote so that they can vote, and they need to vote in the affirmative to fire these officers. And if Elizabeth Pauley won't fire these officers, then she needs to go. That needs to be that needs the vote. That needs to be the vote that needs to happen. Along with that, there are just, the public information officer, Ed Troyer, went on national television and was like, that didn't happen. There were no need, he lied flat out. Whether he saw the videos or not, he lied about it. And he hasn't changed the story, and he hasn't corrected that. The Tacoma police chief hasn't done anything. The Pierce County sheriff hasn't done anything. And as far as we're all concerned, and the family's demand is that they all need to step down from their positions or be fired. So that's one way that we can all be supportive of that, is just on our page, on the Tacoma Action Collective page, on all of our social media, you'll find all of the phone numbers and everything to call these city council members, to call the city manager, to send emails to these people and demand that this be put to a vote, that they be immediately fired.
And I will share, people are posting your Instagram handle too. I will share those things to my page in feed and also on the story to make sure. And I would just ask you, please keep me honest on this too. If there's another step that I miss, I'm following you all regularly, but if there's a step that I miss, tell me. And I definitely am happy to not only use my platform to ensure justice as an outcome, but also to ask my friends who have a little bit of influence to do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, is that there's Tacoma's really good at keeping its secrets, and they're really good at moving so slow that oftentimes people run out of steam, they run out of money, they run out of whatever their resources are that they're pulling from to call for justice. And so that's one of the biggest things, is that we just there are people in Tacoma who just have no idea that this happened, even with all of the stuff that we've been putting out and all of the traction that it has been getting. There are just people who still don't even know that this happened in Tacoma recently. And there are multiple people in the last year who have been killed by the Tacoma PD. Manny's just the most recent. unfortunately. And
Mm-hmm.
so the other part of it that people can do is, if you have 5, $10, if you have more, if you have $1, in the Tacoma Action Collective, like our bio, there's a link to the GoFundMe for Manny's family. And it unfortunately costs a lot of money to get justice.
Yeah, it
They have
does.
some really great lawyers that are working with them, and they're on
Shout out
top
to
of it.
James Bible, who was my
Yeah,
law
shout out to
school.
James
We
Bible.
weren't in the
He's
same class, but we went to the same law school. James Bible is
oh
awesome.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, we just need so much to come around this family, and just this cause in general. Like, we're in a position now, like, with what we have done so far, we were able to get the governor to call for an independent investigation, where, and that's after months of silence and obstruction and, the lack of transparency. So if we can just get more voices pushing, if we can be this big unceasing voice that is telling the state of Washington, the city of Tacoma, the county, that we want justice,
Yeah.
that all eyes are on you guys, and that we're not going to forget. Some of these people are up for election soon.
Yep.
Ed Troyer is running for sheriff, and people don't know that. So he's out here and he's lying on television, but he wants to run to be the sheriff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not okay. So I think
There's
that's
a
the main
I
thing.
don't know if you're familiar with this, but just because the names are so similar, my dad goes to these meetings almost every Saturday in Tacoma with the Black Collective.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you all have been there yet. I've been there. You have talking to them.
I don't know. Unfortunately, the Black Collective likes to meet at like 8 in the morning, and I'm not a morning person, so I haven't
Girl,
been
you gotta
to.
get up because
I
those are
haven't
the
been to
old
a
heads.
meeting lately, but I know that we are in touch with people who frequent the Black Collective,
Yeah,
and
I just want them to be like for that to be just as much a part of their agenda and their discussion
mhm.
as supporting Marilyn Strickland in this upcoming primary, right? It's as important as talking about Denny Heck trying to get their support in the lieutenant governor race. Like, what is the caveat to all of that political power that exists in that room? And I
Yeah.
think them aligning with, how it is in our community, there are sometimes these generational breakdowns that don't serve our collective, pun intended, interests. So how do we ensure that some of those barriers break down? And like I said, I'm committed to doing what I have to do. My dad has a radio show at home that I'm sure he would like. He loves young activists. That's like his favorite thing. So if he can be supportive, know like the whole Rye clan, you got us. And definitely happy to, lend you Papa Rye's cell phone number, which he puts on protest flyers. So it'll be
Okay.
perfectly fine. And then whatever else we can do, I definitely want you all to know, like, I see your work. I am so, so proud of what you all are doing and grateful. You have definitely kept me informed. I went and did my research. I was like, let me tell y'all. So I'm like, starting to do all these things. And I was like, oh, I can just uplift what they're doing. I don't need to like start a thing. Right. And so I'm just here and want to, stand with you and utilize my platforms as you all see fit, and and will be as supportive as you need me to be to help advance whatever's happening on the political side, on the platform side, and on the home connection side. So
Yeah. Well, we are also Friday. We're doing um an action that we've called Manny's Walk, and so we're gonna get together and we're gonna follow the steps of his final moments from his apartment on down to 96th, where um, his life was taken. And so that it's always, it's a pandemic and we want people to be safe, but that's also something that people can do that would really show some support to the family. And it would also help kind of keep that, when there's a lot of people out there, that's when the cameras want to show up. That's when people want to put the story in the news, and that's how we keep it relevant, unfortunately. But also, it's just a really good moment to show solidarity with the family. So that's going to be this Friday at 2 o'clock in Tacoma. So if anybody, that's listening is in Tacoma, or if you're near Tacoma and you want to come down, or up or over, wherever direction you're coming from. But yeah, so all that information is also on our Facebook page and Instagram as well.
Yes, well, I'm so grateful for what you're doing. I hope you guys will go live from the walk. And like I said, I'm happy to be helpful. I hate these are the circumstances, but nonetheless, like I definitely stand with you all in the pursuit of justice, and we just have to work it until we get it. So there's some folks who I'm thinking of immediately who I want to reach out to about being supportive and helpful. But it is time for us to bring some more attention to this. It's tragic, and there's no reason why we should watch the same narrative repeat for our folks. And the end of the matter is also the same. It's time for justice for us, for sure.
It is. It is.
Thank you so much for being here. I will be in touch, and send me everything you need me to post. I'm gonna go to the page too and make sure that I repost it that way too.
All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
I'm so grateful. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I was trying to see if Manny's sister's still here. I would love to chat with her for a moment. I just think it's so important, you all, when we start talking about justice, that we remember the humanity attached to the justice we're pursuing. Somebody asked me if I'm sick. No, but I'm so sleepy, you guys. I was up really late doing a memo, not rested enough. To our sister's last point, this is the time to not get as much sleep. Yeah, I'm not sleeping. Somebody say your voice is raspy. I know, I'm tired of talking too. Okay, well, I don't see his sister here anymore. But I hope I can talk to her soon too. I just want to make sure that we're constantly elevating these stories. And you guys, it's just too important, and it shouldn't require of us that we have to prove it with video, but we know that's what it is. What we should also know is when there's video that definitely undermine what the officers put in a report, and when there's video that clearly demonstrate that there's a problem and that justice has not been served, we need to go for it. Here's his sister. It's not going. There it goes. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I'm driving in the car right now.
You're driving?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not driving. Someone else is
Okay,
driving.
don't do it. Don't do it. Be safe. Tell me your name.
My name's Monèt.
Monèt, yes. So we were just talking about you, and I've read about you both on the GoFundMe and I think in an article about this. Thank you for taking the time to talk about your brother. I think it's so important when we talk about these cases that we remember the people. And so if you would just for a moment talk to us about who Manny Ellis was to you, and anything else you want to share. I would just appreciate that.
Well, he was my best friend. I'm the little sister. I'm the youngest of the three. So I'm kind of the protector. He was my protector, but I'm very protective over my brother. So it worked both ways. But he was just like a really good dude. Like, he was a gentle giant, so he was big, but it's just like he gave the best hugs. He was super affectionate. He just had like the best spirit about him no matter what was going on. He was a musician, so he loved music. He played the drums. We grew up in the church, so he was actually playing drums for his church. And he had told me, he had said, sis, like, I found my purpose. Like, this is what God wants me to do. Like, I'm going to walk in the path that God has set before me. So that's where his head was at. He wasn't concerned about, we all have our struggles. He had a mental health battle that he was dealing with. And I helped him, but he took the steps into getting the help that he needed in regards to his mental health and being medicated and going to counseling. And a phone call came in. So, yeah, he was just like, you could tell that he was really like ready for whatever was to come next. And he was at peace with everything. But his life was just cut short. You know, I'm a single mom of 5 kids, so he was basically like the father to my children. He helped me out with my kids. He took care of his baby. His daughter will be 2 years old in September. He took care of his baby from birth. He was just like a loving, awesome man, and he was raised right by my mom, you know, and we all knew that something was off because we were raised not to really interact with the police. We don't interact with them at all, and if we have to have an interaction, we know that we have to be as respectful as combat them. So when the stories were coming out and they were saying all these things about my brother, there's no way to believe that. Anyone that knew Manny would say Manny didn't mess with the police. He didn't deal with them, you know. And then it took 3 months for people to step forward with video, but I met the witness. I spoke with her on multiple occasions, and she said he was literally just walking down the street. He was walking down the street minding his own business. It was quiet. It was completely quiet, and the only thing she did hear was the officers yelling things out of their car window. And from the looks of it, those police officers looked like they were hyped up on something, because my brother's not a little guy. He's a big dude. A smaller officer picked my brother up and body slammed him on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, Manny never fought back. He didn't fight back at all. He was trying to get up and catch his breath, but he never fought back. So for them to just target my brother for no specific reason, something needs to be done here. Mm-hmm. Like, this is in Tacoma, this is in Pierce County, and it was upsetting for me because, you know, when I had to constantly see people get killed by the police after my brother died, something ignited within me. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't take it no more. I had to do something about it, because it's just, when is it going to stop? And to know, like, in Washington alone, there was 2 other people that were killed by the police a month after my brother was killed by the police, and still there was no action being taken at all. Mm-hmm. Just cover. It took for someone else to die, to be killed by the police in a different state, for people in Washington to pay attention to what's happening in our own home.
Yeah.
And it's still, there's still nothing that's been done. And the governor really, I hope that they can see this. He really needs to put some action behind his words.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I so appreciate you sharing. I think that sometimes when we're able to connect who somebody was to the causes that we're fighting, to the activism that we're engaged in, it gives us a different type of empathy to move through when we're pushing for justice, when we're pushing for righteousness, when we're ensuring that the person who we're fighting for gets the same outcomes that we would want for ourselves, you know? And so I think that you sharing a little bit about who he was, you can kind of almost see that in the pictures that you all have shared, where like there's this smiling face. He looks so harmless. And I think so often, you know, people are afraid of Black people, particularly Black men, in a lot of instances. So there's this image that if they describe it and they see someone who's Black, they can make someone believe that. But we have to continue to debunk all of these things with the truth about what we know about the folks who are losing their lives at the hands of police violence. And so I just, I want to thank you for sharing with me. I want you to know you have my commitment to continuing to lift this story up. And if there are things that I can do that are helpful to you and your family, please let me know. Again, this is in my home state, so it hit really close to home, literally, being born and raised in Seattle. So I want to make sure that we get this right for you, for your family, and for, you know, your 5 little babies, so that they don't have to, you know, live in fear of the police with something like that so close to home. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for listening to us and helping us get his story out there. I appreciate it.
100%. And I'm gonna make sure that we lift up the things that Tacoma Action Collective as well as put up, so that we're making those calls and sending those emails. And if there are other things that you think of that would be meaningful, including donating to the GoFundMe, don't
Yeah.
hesitate to DM me and let me know. I'll be paying attention. I think we lost her. It hit a dead spot. You there, Monèt? I think we lost her. Well, I'm so grateful for you all being with me this evening and this late afternoon, depending on where you are. And thank you for. Oh, here you are. Oh, she left. I hope that you all will look up information on Manuel Ellis, see what happened, and you guys will understand the outrage and the frustration that we from Washington State experience and feel around this particular case. I hope that you all will continue to lift up stories of the folks who have been killed by police in your own home states, your own hometowns. And let's continue to fight for justice, for policy change, and for righteousness. Like, we just deserve that. So please keep Manuel Ellis's family in your prayers. Thank you to Monèt. Thank you to Tacoma Action Collective. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I'm going to try to get some rest. I'm so tired, you guys. Much love. Thank you for being here. Sibling Rivalry should be back next week. Leonard is still on birthday vacation, so he needed some rest too. Much love to all of you. Bye-bye.